at Houston on the east bank of Demerara tomorrow morning and every morning thereafter at 10 a.m. as we demand our rightful share of our God-given wealth. Please join me. I will fight this fight. I am ready for it. Good night and God bless you people until I see whoever come tomorrow at Houston on the east bank of Demerara to fight for our share.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio. This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 FM.
Good day, welcome to your news at noon on Kaieteur Radio. I'm Kevin Smith. These are the top stories we're tracking. Do not approve any additional oil projects without securing more for Guyana, says the opposition leader. Glenn Lal says the leaders must come clean over recovery of royalties and queries whether ExxonMobil reclaimed $18 million signing bonus. Jagdeo dodges question on government's monitoring of oil companies' expenses and says audits can pick up inflated costs. Exxon's admin costs alone more than double Guyana's wages bill, and according to the Bank of Guyana, Guyana's financial reserves down by 6.7%. Article 13 mounts protest calling for renegotiation of oil contract and reminds government of need to keep campaign promise. Meanwhile, Indian national found dead in Kitty home. Stay tuned to stay informed.
Go loud or go home. Never miss out on your favorite local radio segments, local and international podcasts, and DJ mixes.
That's right.
With the Go Loud app. Discover podcasts like Common Sense, Red Table Talk, The Breakfast Club, and the best mixes from DJs worldwide, and much more. Stream all of your favorite local radio stations in one app. Go loud on what matters to you. Download the Go Loud app in the App or Play Store today and start.
Adapting Vision.
And now for the news in detail. Given that the government of Guyana has already missed a glorious opportunity to rake in more value for Guyanese from its rich oil resource by failing to use the Liza 1 permit renewal to secure better terms from the oil operator, ExxonMobil, leader of the opposition Aubrey Norton is of the firm view that any further permit approval must bring additional benefits to Guyana. Norton said that he believes that in any negotiation, parties use their leverage to achieve their objectives. Likewise, the leaders in government must follow in the footsteps of other developed nations to ensure their people benefit from the oil wealth. On May 31st, the state-operated EPA renewed ExxonMobil's permit to operate in the Liza 1 oil field in the Stabroek Block without inserting clauses that could benefit the people. Instead, the EPA added a mere $5 for flaring of gas and settled for assurance instead of insurance. Meanwhile, the U.S. oil company is currently seeking approval for its fifth project, Uaru Plus. The EPA has since ordered an environmental impact assessment be carried out to determine the risks involved in the operations. And moving on. Amid growing concerns as to whether ExxonMobil is recovering the 2% royalty it pays to Guyana for its oil, Kaieteur News publisher Glenn Lal has called on the country's leaders to speak definitively on exactly what is the situation. He has also queried whether the controversial $18 million signing bonus Exxon paid to Guyana back in 2018 was recovered by the oil major. We had examined the production sharing agreement Guyana signed with Exxon pertaining to recoverable and non-recoverable items. In the latter category, there is no explicit listing of royalty being an unrecoverable item. It is crucial to note that oil companies such as ExxonMobil have paid $3 billion over the past 15 years to resolve a range of charges, including that they regularly cheated the U.S. government and Native American communities out of royalties on oil and gas leases, raising concerns they use similar techniques to rob citizens in poor countries of resource wealth. Meanwhile, even though ExxonMobil is deducting 75% of Guyana's oil towards its expenses upfront, the country seems to have no mechanisms in place to monitor the US billion-dollar spending of the oil companies, as the nation's Vice President Bharat Jagdeo could not state whether the country has mechanisms in place to oversee and authorize any spending activity. When Jagdeo was asked on Tuesday during a press conference to specifically say who is monitoring the spending, he shifted the discussion to stakeholders in the Stabroek Bloc. He elaborated on the fact that the oil companies own 100% of the venture, but yet they are not privy to decision-making. In Guyana's case, he told the publisher of Kaieteur News, Glenn Lal, that the country gets 50% of the profit, but are not 50% owners of the company, even though Jagdeo was not asked to elaborate on stakes and ownership. Meanwhile, Guyana's total wages bill for 2020 was $6.1 billion, and the following year that went up to $10.1 billion, taking into account the revision of wages and salaries. And according to the financial statements recently released by ESSO, its administrative costs alone, inclusive of its wages bill, topped $38.6 billion during that same period. As such, it would mean that the company's administrative costs alone for the 2 years are more than double the entire wages and salaries bill for the entire country over the period in review. Illustrated in the documents recently released, it was noted in ESSO's statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income that at the period ending December 2021, it had paid that year some $17.8 billion in administrative costs. And moving on, with inflation and the cost of living skyrocketing globally in recent months, countries have been increasingly grappling with volatile price increases for imports. With Guyana expected to maintain a buffer reserve enough to cover 3 months of import, the most recent Bank of Guyana statement on the country's assets and liabilities instead lists the country's general reserves as minus $6.7 billion. The account for the contingency reserve accounts for some $2.4 billion. The information has since been published in the official gazette, which documents the country's total capital and liabilities at in excess of $487 billion. The time has now moved on to 12 hours 8 in Guyana. We'll take a short break and return with your news.
This is GHK Lal inviting you to join me weekdays from Monday to Friday on the National Outlook for commentary on a range of issues. Immediately after the 12 noon and 7 p.m. newscasts on Kaieteur Radio at 99.1 FM and 99.5 FM. Looking forward to you sharing in the conversation.
Welcome back. Let us continue with the news. Civil society group Article 13 has mounted what it calls a series of protest action calling for the renegotiation of the lopsided oil contract Guyana inked with ExxonMobil. According to co-founder of Article 13, Dr. Yog Mahadio, the protest action is to specifically urge the leaders of the PPPC to fulfill a promise made to renegotiate the horrible oil deal. Dr. Mahadio, who led the picket line on Tuesday, was joined by a group of concerned citizens who held placards and stood in front of the Ministry of Natural Resources Duke Street, Kingston, Georgetown office to publicly register their approval because of how the matter is being dealt with. A clearly upset Mahadio said that the purpose for the exercise is to remind the PPPC of the promise they made to renegotiate the badly done oil contract. He said that his group will engage in protest every week. He stressed that the agreement should give the leadership of the PPPC more than enough reasons to go back to the negotiation table. In other news, relatives of an Indian national who was found dead on Monday in his home at Sandy Bab Street, Kaieteur, Georgetown, are now seeking help to get his body back to India. The dead man has been identified as 48-year-old Arwinder Singh of Punjab, India. He was reportedly employed at BK International Inc. as a supervisor for the company's gold operations at Madhya. It is understood that Singh was not working because of ill health and was resting at home where he was found dead. According to police, the Indian national had been living at the Sandibab Street location for 2 weeks and was found lifeless by security guards around 18:30 on Monday. And I'll just tell you, Kaieteur News publisher Glenn Lal has criticized opposition and other operatives who have opportunistically latched on to disclosures in a recent Vice News documentary on Guyana, saying that for years his newspaper has shown light on the shadowy deals with the PPPC Guyana government and Chinese companies. But the same people who are now speaking up were silent. The Vice News documentary titled Guyana for Sale, which premiered on Sunday, has as its main character, Vice President Bara Jagdeo. His Chinese tenant and friend, businessman Suzy Rong, is heard in an interview accusing Jagdeo of allegedly accepting bribes for large developmental projects undertaken in the country. Jagdeo has denied the allegations and has since signaled that he will take legal action against the Chinese businessman and also promised to evict him from his property. Meanwhile, Glenn Lal was joined by a group of citizens on Tuesday to picket at the McDoom East Bank Demerara as they continue to call for better terms and conditions in Guyana's oil deal. The protesters held placards and stood in the sidelines of the East Bank Public Road as they expressed disgust at the PPPC administration for ignoring their calls to renegotiate the oil deal. Several of the protesters shared the view that the politicians are taking advantage of the poor and defenseless people in the country. And to wrap things up, President Ali on Tuesday released the names of the persons who will oversee the Commission of Inquiry into the events of the March 2020 general and regional elections. The announcement comes days after the president reassured citizens that he will establish the inquiry into the polls. In a statement issued on Tuesday, the president said that the inquiry will be conducted by a panel of distinguished judicial professionals, including retired Justice of Appeal Stanley John, former Attorney General, High Court Judge and Acting Justice of Appeal in the Eastern Caribbean, Godfrey Smith, former Chair of the Chief Elections Commissioner of India, Dr. Kwarshari, and former Chancellor of Guyana, Carl Singh. With the time now moving on to 12 hours 13, we wrap things up with the page 7 of today's Kaieteur News. Divine help is on the way. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Daily it is becoming clear that this biblical truth is one that we must embrace at this juncture of our existence. In so doing, we are putting our trust in the Creator. Although we are yet to see the manifestation of the changes that we so desperately need in this country, we must be confident that He is faithful and will come through for us. There is a shift in the atmosphere, and at the Creator's appointed time, His name alone will be glorified. So, fellow Guyanese, keep on hoping. Divine help is on the way. And that brings us to the end of today's News at Noon. I'm Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ads on Kaieteur Radio's newscasts. Streamed live on 6 different mediums, reaching hundreds of thousands. Advertise today and watch your dollar grow. Call us on 225-8465 or 226-8210 today.